fashion photography is kind of a very vast world. I mean, fashion photography has always been existing, and I think that right now it's crossing different paths, but it's always it's always been focused as a very beautiful image, especially in the fashion industry. It could also give a lot of messages. So it's about beautiful images where it shows also fashion in its whole. But I think it's also a very freedom of expressing your vision and what you really want to express. Doing a course of photography right now is also to kind of educate and bring culture to the new generation of how photography really started, which not saying going back to film, but understanding the process and the slowness. That's something that we do not have anymore through social media. So I think it's also very important to, in the educational way of culture, of bringing back what was the past, but also evolve it to the future. So for sure, I mean, social media has changed the whole perception, and someone can say that photography can be done by anyone, which in a way is true because we have, phones and everything, but at the same time, there's much more behind. I mean, it's not just about clicking, but it's about constructing the image, about seeing, giving a message and others. I mean, photography in all its forms, it's also a social way of giving messages, and the fashion has always demonstrated that, but it's not just about beautiful clothing. It's, you have to consider the light, the expression, so it's a lot of elements. So I think this is also very important, never to lose track on it.
To me, it's also the possibility and the opportunity to depict the social moment in which we are living. That's also the role of photography, as well as the role of design. It's not about the aesthetic and the clothes. That's the reason why, talking to the students, I always say fashion is not about garment. It's a social, anthropological, cultural expression. And this evolution, of course, now has been going extremely fast through, as Sara was saying, mobile phones, new techniques also apply to photography and filming. But it's beautiful how photographers been in a way giving also a direction in terms of social, political. That's why sometimes the fascinating aspect about the fashion of photography is not about the beauty of the composition of the image, the color, the poetry, but it's about the ability to express it through an image, values. There's a very deep relationship between designing and designers and fashion photography, and especially nowadays thinking about the evolution of photography moving into fashion filming. I always define fashion to be a visual language, and that's the reason why this kind of very symbiotic relationship between photography and designing has been one of the key elements, and also in a way magnifying the word and the role of the designers. So if I think about the past and then linking and bridging the past with, of course, present and the future, I really believe that the reason why fashion became so deep important, not only from the aesthetic point of view, but from the cultural point of view, it's really about this deep relationship, how photography has been in a way magnifying the role of designers, and how the designers have been exploited by the lens of the photographers. That was, of course, the past in which the use of social media was not existing yet. But thinking about nowadays, in which, of course, the use of images it's so spread out in the world, it's becoming even more and more interesting and in a way deep as a relationship.
If you also have to think about Peter Lindbergh, I mean, obviously he's a fashion photographer, but his fashion came through the beauty of the actresses or the models. I mean, that before came that, and then the clothes. But then there are photographers which construct their image with clothing, like Merton Marcus. I mean, they really passionate about fashion and also obsessed by the image and the perfection. So there are really different ways of seeing it. So I think this is also very important, because sometimes you just think that fashion is just about clothes, but there's much more. So I think that's important too. When photography started, it was very slow. I mean, we had, it was the camera, the film, you had to wait, and now everything is digitalized, so it's very fast, very quick. So I think, obviously, technology and it's part of the evolution in our lives, and artificial intelligence is a big, question, issue or not issue. Right now, I just think that why it's important to do such courses, like photography right now, it's to understand also how to use it in the right way, because obviously there's always kind of short tracks to arrive to the image, but it's not the same of your head, it's your ideas, it's, artificial intelligence creates what you're really thinking. It's not that they can create something that you're not telling. I mean, you can do it as a shortcut, but it's not going to be real as something that you're doing it by yourself and you're constructing it, because, when you do images in fashion, there is a set, there are people, there's the light, you have to touch things. So I think this is also very important, especially for the new generation, because I'm not saying that they don't have the tools, but it's very easy for them to think that that's the only path of using, technology like this, without thinking that there could be something else. I think every generation has its own curse in a way. And I'm not saying that artificial intelligence is the new curse, but you have to really make them understand how it can work, and that you can also live without it, and you can use your own, your hands and your own head and your own visions.
Everybody is nowadays thinking that, the easiest solution is coming from the fastest solution. And the methodology of Polimoda is based on the opposite. It's based on the biggest pillar that we have here at school, applied to every single category of course we are teaching here at school. It's about the research. That's making a very interesting aspect about how sometimes people are going into the surface and staying only on the surface. That's, to me, search. Just like you find an inspiration and you don't go deeply into what this inspiration is very much associated to you, to your culture, to what you want to translate through what I like to say, the digestion of the process. And that's why artificial intelligence is just like one tool that you can easily apply when you think about, for example, post-production, color correction. But from the other side, for me, it's extremely important, the idea that's behind every single creative message. And then even when we apply to fashion photography and filming, it's the same. We don't need to create replicas produced by an algorithm. We need to have authentic, deep, true, independent ideas. I believe that Polimoda is a cultural hub more than a fashion school. The role, but also the relevance of Polimoda nowadays in the world of the Fashion Institute, it's about creating, forging, supporting, magnifying the talents of our students. And I really believe that we are exploring fashion at 360 degrees. That's the reason why studying here is not only about studying design or studying business, it's about exploring fashion from every angle, moving also outside the idea of just like pure fashion in the sense of garments. And I really believe that there's no better place considering the evolution of fashion, how the young generation, but also the fact that here in Florence at Polimoda, every single year we are hosting more than 100 countries represented by our 2,000 students. And it's becoming a way of interacting. It's about understanding the language respecting each other, supporting each other. I really believe it's extremely important to create a very versatile, a very agile environment in which, of course, the ability of the single, it's working together with the community and the team of people. It's also the reason why I believe that this context of Polimoda, it's very much like the best place and space for studying photography and filming, because the environment, it's very diverse. It's about having students coming from so different cultures, so many cultures, with different environment, different backgrounds, the ability to connect all the ingredients in a course. I think it's the most important experience that a student can approach here at school. I would say that Polimoda is a safe place because we're never judging people by I like, I don't like. We work on the authenticity, we work on the research, we work to magnify the talent of the single, and having this diversity explored by the students through, of course, the study, the professors, the faculty, but also the other fellows. I think it's becoming one of the most important elements of studying fashion, filming and photography here in Polimoda.
Well, the relationship of Fondazione Sozzani with photography has always been there. I mean, Fondazione Sozzani was founded 2016, but before it was Galleria Carla Sozzani who founded it in '91. So, and it was focused on photography, art and design, but majorly on photography. So the idea was born in a moment where there wasn't fashion galleries. I mean, it wasn't about doing, I mean, there were galleries, but photographic galleries in the 90s, it was practically impossible to have. So it was more about there also the freedom of expressing a passion that Carla in this case had, and just to put it, you know, for others. So this is how it was all came in a very natural phase, and then became one of the pillars of the foundation, which photography is important, not just fashion, but itself. So it's part of the DNA, and I think that's why then we're here today with Polimoda, because I think it's very important to what Massimiliano was saying before, about even creating a community and synergies. I mean, synergies are fundamental, especially I think that two institutions that represent a fashion in different forms, the fact of creating a synergy and kind of friendship and also relationship is also an important message from the outside, because too many times the people think that fashion is just one man, women, them show, but instead it's about community and synergy. So I think that's also a very important message to give.
It's also about joining forces. Sara was mentioning how much from the 90s, Carla Sozzani has been influencing a generation of artists, and among the artists, of course, we have to include photographers, filmmakers, has been in a way stimulating the growth of the association between images and fashion. And nowadays, through the foundation, we have the possibility to go in depth into an archive of images. They are a guide. Again, the past is a link to the future. It's always connecting bridges, and especially in these specific cases, I really have the feeling that we are joining the forces. From the library to the archive, the students, they have the possibility in Firenze and Milano to really understand what made the Italian fashion industry becomes so important and so relevant in the world. That's not only about a methodology, but it's also about the possibility to deep dive into, I really believe it's an incredible opportunity in terms of volumes, images, at the disposal of the students to really better understand where to push and to drive fashion photography and filming in the future.
Well, fashion film has become quite important right now, very, very almost photography and fashion film is very balanced. We have to think about probably more than 15 years ago, nobody was really talking about fashion films. And then, well, one of the first people that really invested was Diane Pernay with a shaded fashion film. And that was like something really new because everyone, you know, when you thought about film, it was or short movies or movies that you went to go to the cinema and see them. So I think it's about the storytelling because when technology begin to come over and think about, okay, it's not just the photo, but we are gonna do, I don't know, a backstage film video or something. It was more about enlarging more the process of photography in this case. I mean, I remember when in 2010 with Vogue, we went online. The idea was to do the backstage films of shootings, which nobody ever saw because you just saw the cover of the magazine, the shooting inside, but nobody really knew what was happening behind. And that was kind of fascinating and people were curious, you know, and this was before Instagram because then Instagram, it's a little bit about the backstage of life of people. So I do think it's interesting and also evolving at the same time. Ask me if fashion film needs to have fashion in the film. My first answer would say no. I mean, I think it's more challenging the fact of thinking of doing a fashion film because you can really construct the beauty and the image through different ways. And obviously there has to be clothes, so that could be the fashion, but it doesn't mean that you have to put in the face something because then that's a commercial fashion film. So that's really the difference. So I think filmography, I mean, it's about doing, okay, a fashion film, but whether you're gonna decide if you want to represent a brand or something, that's when we tell to students do a fashion film, but doesn't mean that fashion has to be in your eyes because you can do it in different ways. I mean, a fashion film can be an interview like between the two of us or do something more of a reportage, and it's not about that. I mean, then it becomes documentary, which is a little bit different, but I think it's always about the idea, the vision, and the messages you want to give. With the new generation of creative, that more and more, it's not just about one person, but it's a community because it comes more natural. I mean, starting by yourself, it's not that it's wrong or right, it's the fact that you want to be supported and you also want to have a relationship with people that can tell you, I think it's good or bad, or you're going the right way, or it's not about you're good enough or you're bad, but it's about really exchanging. And I think this, you can see it with the new generation because more and more I get to see small, medium communities that come and maybe the output is a photograph or maybe an outfit, but then behind there is really a lot. And people think, but it's always been like that.
The fashion industry is a huge, gigantic industry in terms of finance and revenues, but still remains an industry made of people, and the sense of community to me is stronger than the financial revenues. Its ability to connect every single element. Everybody has a talent, but also everybody has a weakness. What is, from my point of view, a privilege of studying in Polimoda, having so many different courses, having so many different students from everywhere in the world, and now it's giving you the chance to create a relationship that goes much deeper than just like your course. In some cases, our relationships that last forever are the possibility to having an idea and then deep exploring the idea into becoming a project that you can never do by yourself. It's about made by teams of people supporting each other and supporting each other in the moment in which you have up moments, but also when you have like down moments. It's about the possibility to interact in 360 degrees. That means exploring filming and photography not only from a very static point of view, but the exploration through what, in terms of society and sociology, is the evolution of of the future. It is very interesting to try to explore some steps that probably we can define pillars, how to become. I don't want to talk about successful, because to me success nowadays has a very different meaning in comparison with the past. But a very well trained, very well prepared fashion photographer or fashion filmer for the future. And to me, everything is starting from a methodology that we teach, but the methodology is not enough if you don't have like a cultural preparation. To me, this is the message. In every creative discipline, I really believe that the authenticity is one side, but then culture is the other side. The archive of Fondazione Sozzani, from the other side, the library of Polimoda. There are two very important pillars, but then you need the curiosity, then you need the preparation that's about political, economy, finance, anthropology, sociology, because we don't need images. We need images that are able to stimulate the creativity of other people, influencing the creativity of other people. And I want to conclude with discipline, because even though we are working in a very creative industry, still remains a multi-billions industry. But the discipline is fundamental. The talent is not enough. That's the reason why, even though you have the talent, but you constantly need to train yourself. And training yourself means the possibility to come out from your bubble, what you know, what you can control, what you can manage, but that requires a lot of work, a lot of activities, attending guest lectures. As you said, the community and creating communities are very important, but also having the chance and the possibility to have two very important key players, Fondazione Sozzani and Polimoda, means talking, liaising daily, and creating dialogues with the industry, because that is going to be like the most important element when you finish the other course. The relationship that you can interweave during the other course will be extremely beneficial at the end of the course. I would say that fashion is a huge industry, but it remains a small world in which everybody knows each other. Everybody can be like a support in the future of your career. But again, that requires a lot of discipline.
I totally agree with what you're saying, and I think also passion is very important. What I always say to the students is, your passion is your vital, tool to bring forward, but at the same time also your values. So I think this is important, because when you are a creative person, you want to be a photographer. I mean, your values are already, life is a very big compromise, but your values cannot be compromised. And I think this is kind of an important ingredient of thinking of how to come in this kind of, we're talking about photography world, but it's a value for everything. So I think this is very important, because passion is important, but then the values have to follow that. So this is really the main kind of, I think, not rule, but main things that people should have, because then obviously curiosity, and then when you have the possibility of doing a course with two institutions, you meet a lot of different people, so never even be afraid of asking and interact and get the most out of it, because I think then that's also very important, because then you create synergies and communities. So I always say to students, never be afraid to ask, because it doesn't cost and it gives you the possibility to open doors.